God, laying your majesty aside. You reached down in love to show me life, lifted from darkness into light. Oh, king for a slave, trading your righteousness for shame. Despite all my pride and foolish ways, caught in your infinite embrace. Oh, and I find myself here on my knees again, caught up in grace like an avalanche. Nothing compares to this love, 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 burning in my heart. Burning in my heart. Burning in my heart.
I take the idea of motherhood very seriously. And we have examples of motherhood from history, specifically the Virgin Mary, right? That we can look to. And I think that as a society we don't do that very often, because motherhood as a concept just isn't as sexy as the idea of going out and having a great job and being influential and becoming famous. It just doesn't sound as good. And as a young person, I can tell you, growing up, we're told in the media and in our schools and by our friends and even by our churches in different ways that the best thing we can do is go to college, get a degree, and find a way to become wealthy and famous or powerful and independent, right? And to go and become who we were made to be. And the problem is we were made to be holy. We were made for other people, for relationships with other people. And that might mean working as a janitor and taking care of your family. It could mean having a great job. But career and material things should never take the place of real love for other people. People should always come first. And I think that our society essentially says self should come first. I should come first. I should come first. What's in it for me? When the real question we should be asking, and the question that the leader in Tango is supposed to ask, is how can I take care of my follower? How can I make her more comfortable? How can I give her more opportunities to be beautiful in this dance? So it's a perspective change that Tango can help to bring about. But there's not a lot of tango dancers in New York City, so we need more of them. We need more people to come and have that perspective change.
My background in dance includes different techniques, including contact improvisation and Emily Conrad's continuum movement, both with this deep connection to our own bodies and to the bodies of others. And it's really interesting that contact improvisation began in the early 70s when St. John Paul II was beginning his theology of the body writings. So it's really beautiful that those two came out about the same time. And even the research on touch, how important it was, the actual skin-to-skin contact, that research started coming in the 70s and 80s as well. So it's really beautiful just to look at how all those three came about at the same time. and that there was this craving, this importance of the connection between bodies, that at that time it was really manifesting that we were probably missing that in the world, that whatever reason we had forgotten as a society how important that was and how important the purity of that was. With dance, that's such a safe space to connect with one another, with touch, especially with the research that was coming out. It was with babies, it was with skin-to-skin contact right after they were born for that intimate bond, that intimate connection between the baby and its parents. And then St. John Paul II's theology of the body, really bringing it back to our thirst and what we're really thirsting for, that connection to the other person, that touch, that to be with them, but that's also really thirsting for our union with God. So I think it's really beautiful that all of those came about around the same time. And that, yeah, the world was craving this connection and how it's being filled in such beautiful ways.
I think many of us, especially when we become teenagers, because that's kind of when I went away from the church, we get caught up in the culture. We listen to the news and we believe everything we hear. When in the 70s, when I was, actually it was the late 60s, early 70s, that whole women's lib was the big issue. I am woman, let me roar. It all sounded like great stuff. But where were we getting that from? We were getting it from the TV and from the radio, in songs, in music. And you get sucked up into the culture. And why? Because you don't understand your faith. And not only do you not understand your faith, but one thing I didn't have, which I learned later, was a relationship with Jesus. When I was a child growing up, we were taught to memorize the catechism, questions, answers. Well, what happens when you get into that teenage time when, the pop culture is sucking you up, if you don't have a relationship with Jesus, well, then you can get led astray real easy. And that's what happened to me and so many people of my generation. Some people I might be speaking to, maybe your parents don't go to church anymore. Maybe hopefully you do. Well, because they didn't learn to love Jesus like we should have. Once I came back and I had that awakening, I'll never ever leave the church ever again. I was away, for over 20 years, but now I'm back for over 25. So praise God. That's what I say. And, I would say if you're struggling with your faith, you need to get some good programming in your life. Like tune in EWTN. Go to their website, EWTN.com. You'll find real things about our faith, programming. I also do a program on EWTN called The Catholic View for Women. And one of the reasons why I started that program on EWTN was because I know there are many other women out there like I was, lost, didn't know our faith. They hear about the churches against us practicing, using contraception and birth control pills. But you really know what that's all about? No. I never had even read Humanae Vitae, that beautiful encyclical by Paul VI. Well, you need to delve into the teachings before you can say, I don't believe in it. And that was the problem. I didn't even know they existed. All those years of Catholic education, and I never read one encyclical. And so my point to young people is, don't just walk away from the church. It is a beautiful place to be. And I invite you to delve deeper. Tune in the Catholic View for Women. Go to EWTN. They have all kinds of programming. read the Bible. I would never even was taught to even read the Bible, and now it's like breakfast. It's breakfast before breakfast in the morning. B&B, Bible before breakfast and Bible before bed. That's what you need to do. So they're just good little hints. And like I said, I was away for 20 and back for 25, and I'm not leaving ever again.
Dance is a universal language. We all communicate through our body. I believe body language is actually 55% of how we communicate, and the words are only about 7% of a message. When you're speaking with someone, when you're communicating, you're actually taking in their movements for 55% of what they're saying. So I think definitely dance is so important of how we communicate in the world, how art communicates with the world, how we create one culture. I think dance is definitely a way we can do that. Even with babies, infants, I think 80% of how they communicate is through their movement. And it's really beautiful that some research has shown that the more a mother touches her child, the more she actually can understand what those movements mean. So babies can't communicate with words, but they still need to be understood by their mom about their needs, about what they want, about that bond, and about their love they're feeling with their mom and their dad, with their mother and their father. And the more a baby is held by its parents, the more the parent can understand what the baby needs. And I think that translates to when we're adults too. Even though we have the language skills of words, we can express ourselves, we think more clearly in that way. But I think our movements are still so important. And I think, again, being able to touch one another, being able to physically connect with each other's bodies can only help us understand each other's movements and understand each other in a more full way. And I think dance is able to represent that the bodies can be beautifully connected and beautifully moving together and touching one another to more fully understand what we're trying to communicate in the world, what needs to be expressed in society and in culture. I think is definitely, I am a little biased being a dancer, but I feel like it's more fully expressed through dance with any emotions, with joy, with suffering, with compassion. It's our full body that expresses it. And I think no matter what language you speak, by seeing someone express an emotion in that way, you immediately can feel and to sympathize with them.
Again, I would say I do think that that sounds a lot like our society, personally. And that's partially because I think that men have been discouraged from taking on certain roles. And I think many women have been encouraged to take on roles that don't even make them happy. Taking on the role, for example, of being the economic provider for a family. Women are just as capable of doing that. They're just as capable of getting a job. But when it comes to feeling the pressure of taking care of your kids and balancing a career and all of these other things, I think that there's a lot of pressure on women today to try to do all of it and still feel energetic and happy and feel like they can have it all. And I think that that's created a society that's, especially of women, that are deeply unhappy because they feel like there's a lot of demands being placed upon them that they can't necessarily fulfill. But one other thing that I would say is that I think that God has grace on societies. There will never be a perfect society on this earth before the second coming where everything is perfect, and there will be families who are destroyed either by poverty or parents divorcing or whatever it is. But God can work through those situations if that means that the mother is the primary economic provider. The kids in that family can still turn out just fine. I think the problem isn't necessarily in the particular instances when women have to provide or women feel like they have to lead because the man isn't leading. I think the problem is when our society starts telling women, yeah, be like men. Just go out and be like men. Be leaders and take over the business world and have your kids and don't rely on men. Do everything yourself and give yourself a nice big bank account so you don't need to rely on anyone else. You can be independent. I think that sounds like a great promise. It sounds like a great idea, but the pursuit of that fantasy becomes very destructive on families, particularly I think with the relationship between the parents and the relationship of the mother to the children, which is strained when career becomes a primary focus.
My name is Brian Kemper. I am the Youth Outreach Director at Priests for Life and the President of Stand True Pro-Life Outreach. We are an outreach that is geared to educate, activate, and equip this generation to be the generation that will abolish abortion. We believe that more and more the youth are understanding what life is and that there's an attack on life from the beginning of their days. And so we are seeing a rise in young people who are absolutely committed and dedicated to bringing that end to abortion in their lifetime. And so our goal, again, is to educate them, to give them the knowledge they need to fight this battle, to make sure that they know all of the aspects there are when it comes to culture of life issues. To activate them, to create events, to put projects out there that they can get involved in. One of the things that I was asked years ago about youth is so many times they're sort of an afterthought. And what we want to do is we want to create a pro-life ministry organization that the youth can actually take ownership of, to say this is our pro-life movement. And so we do that with the different activities that we have, the Pro-Life Day of Silent Solidarity, the summer internship, the March for Life Youth Rally, the different things that we do. and then to equip them, to give them some of the resources they need. We have a huge line of pro-life T-shirts and then drop cards and educational things that they can use to go out and to then be that witness. So that's really the goal of this part of the whole Priests for Life family, is to make sure that this next generation is the last generation that has to face legalized child killing.
So God, who is pure love, is pouring out his life and love to all humanity. He wants all of humanity to receive his life and love. In a sense, using the analogy, conceive his life and love. He wants that life and love to grow within inside of us. And continuing the analogy, he wants us to give birth to that life and love back to himself and to the whole world. And this is not just a metaphor. There's a woman who walked on this planet who opened up herself so freely and totally to God's life and love that she literally received within her own womb and conceived and gave birth to divine life. The Blessed Virgin Mary is the perfect icon of what it means to be human, to receive, conceive, and bear forth divine life. She did it physically. We are all meant to do it spiritually. Christ says, I have come to give man life and joy to the full. He wants this life and love to just be so overflowing through us that it's just pouring forth from us back to himself and to every single person we ever come in contact with.
I find myself here on my knees again, caught